Welcome to the home page of Insight Live. It's an online ceramic information management system from Digitalfire Corporation. Normally you log in on this page here, or you click here and put in your email address to create a new account. However, if we have created an account for you and emailed you a link, then you'll bypass this page. If you have a Digitalfire username and password, you can also use them here. Because if Insight Live does not find an account, it checks at digitalfire.com and transfers the status. For example, if you have a non-expired Insight Level 2 or a site license, you will automatically have individual or group access here. So I'm going to click Login. So now we're in. I have nothing open right now, so the content area, the main part of the page, displays an introduction to the features of Insight Live. It can also display other things depending on what I'm doing. Across the top I have the general toolbar, and that will almost always be visible. Down the left are the various managers. For example, the recipe manager is open by default. I have no recipe, so you might be wondering why there's a search, but we'll find out about that in a minute. The recipe manager has its own toolbar. The icons I see in the toolbars depend on my level of access or what I'm doing. For example, export requires at least premium membership status, but I don't have that. Let's check. I'm going to click the store icon here. This is where I can see what my status is. It says I'm a basic member. Below that I can see a chart that shows the differences between the levels, and at the bottom of that chart I can purchase a higher level of membership if I want to. I'm going to go back home. Notice the flashing icons here. They're trying to get my attention because I'm new. And down here in the messages section, the blinking red light is telling me that there's a message that I haven't read yet. Now I can see the messages from and to me on this list. And I can see who sent each. When all components of a thread have been read, either by me or my recipient, the title is going to be shown in italics. It is not in italics, so that means that I haven't read it yet. Of course, to read it, I just need to click on it, and there'll be a respond button there. I can compose a message using the button at the top here, and I can send that to another Insight Live user. I'll click on that. But notice it says you must be logged in as a group member to compose messages. Unfortunately, I'm not a group member. Now the messaging system is internal. It doesn't depend on the email system of the internet, although a notification is sent when I send a message to someone else. So I'll close this. This icon shows my account page. Here I can edit my information and reset my passwords. I'll go back home. This icon is my support tickets. Normally these are going to be between me and the Insight Live technical support. But I can invite other people to see and to be able to contribute to a conversation. Let's go back home to Insight Live. This icon is my personal preferences, where I can control certain aspects of the way the site operates. Now notice along the top of the screen here, as I move my mouse pointer to each of these icons, a little help tip pops up showing me its function. Now of course that's not going to work if you're using an iPhone or an iPad or some touchscreen device. Also, let's take a look at these flashing icons. They're begging my attention. They're only going to flash the first couple of times I log in. This one is the video tutorials. So if I come to this site and I don't know anything about how to use it, obviously this is the first place I'm going to want to go. And the videos are available in different formats. The highest quality one will work on any desktop computer that has Flash installed. If not, then try one of the other two. So I'll close that. Now this other flashing icon over here is the help system. I'll just go to the Home and Help. Pretty well everything that I need to know is going to be here. I just have to do a little looking. I'm going to look on the General Information and then click on Privacy to see what it says. This explains that there's no Flash technology, there's no JavaScript frameworks, there's no Ajax, there's no underlying content management system, there's not even any cookies in Insight Live. In fact, there's no outside code, and we've done this for security, reliability, and compatibility reasons. Let's go back a couple of steps and I'll show you something else in Help here on the Recipe Management page. This of course deals with the Recipe Manager, which is over here. Let's look on Reference Recipes. Now this page is where I can find batches of public reference recipes that I can search. Although it appears I have no recipes over here, actually I do. And these batches are negative numbered. And they count down from 0, whereas the batches that you'll be importing count upwards from 0. So let's close this and let's try to search that database. So that was -1. So I'm going to click Advanced Search here, and then I'll enter a batch of -1, and then I'll click Search. And here I have some recipes. It says there are 0 of my own recipes, 758 in this batch, so I'll click on the first one. And now I'm previewing this recipe. Now in Preferences, I could tell Insight to open the recipe when I click on it. But by default it previews the recipe. And there are some advantages of that we'll see about in a minute. Notice up here it says that this is a read-only recipe because of course it's a reference recipe. So now I'll click to open it. Notice I can't edit it here, but I can report it. So I'll click on Report. This I could obviously print on my printer. Notice that the report has created a new tab, so I'm just going to close that tab and it'll take me back to Insight Live. Now if I go down here and I click on some other recipes, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. You can see that those recipes show beside my original one that is open. Each of these is being previewed, and you'll find that this is very handy. Okay, now notice up at the top here, whenever I open a recipe, it gets added to this history list, so I have quick access to these. I can clear the list, or I can turn it off in my preferences. And there actually is a dedicated history link over here. It's going to show right here. And I can clear that as well. And that's going to disappear next time I do anything else. For example, I'll search, it's gone. Now let's close this and I'll show you one other thing in the help system of Insight Live, and that's down here at the bottom. My reference. This is actually the Digitalfire reference library. If I click on ceramic oxides, it has taken us to the Digitalfire site, logged us in here, and I have all this technical information about oxides, minerals, materials, recipes, troubleshooting, anything you could want. So you have direct access to the Digitalfire reference library from within Insight Live if you have at least a premium membership, which you'll have automatically if you have Desktop Insight Level 2 or site license that's not expired. So let's close this and go back to Insight Live. Now I've closed the reference database, so let's take a closer look at one of these recipes. Down here I've clicked on this one. We're previewing it over here. Notice it's showing me, let's go a little closer. It's showing me the name of the recipe, the description, the code number which is unassigned, and I can see the materials in the recipe. The additions here, I can see the total of the recipe and the additions separately. I can also put in a total and print a batch ticket right from this preview. The recipe has a URL assigned, more than one can be assigned. It has a type code. Notice this one's undefined. We'll learn more about that in a minute. I have notes, and at the bottom I have private notes. In addition, if I open this recipe, there are other things that are in an opened recipe that you can't see in a previewed one. Here's one. I'll click the Show the XML. This XML that you see in this box is a representation of all the data in the recipe. It can be copied, pasted into another recipe, and imported. On the bottom is a text representation showing just the name of the recipe, the description, the materials, and additions that it contains. So anyway, let's close this. And I'm going to search for ash glazes. Notice it defaults to searching in the name. I can also search in the materials, notes, and picture base. I can also set the order in which they'll be shown, and I can search for a specific type. Now I want to leave this at -1 because I'm searching for the first batch of reference recipes. So I'll click Search. And here we have ash glazes. Let's click on this one. Then I'll open it. And there's another one right below it that has the same name. Let's open that beside it. And I'll just zoom out a little so we can see both of them. Now this is a good way to compare one recipe with another. This is one of the advantages of being able to preview a recipe rather than just opening it. Because I can click on any of these others and they're going to show in the same place. All of them are being compared with that original. Notice the columnar format in which Insight Live sets up the screen. This is being done so the site is more workable on small devices like cell phones and tablets. Typically on these, you double tap in one of these boxes, and that box is going to zoom to fill the width of the screen. And then you double tap again and it zooms back out. Okay, let's close all of these. I'm going to click the Close All button or icon over here. Let's do a little bit more advanced search. But first, let's go to that other search again. Notice that the second one here had Cedar Heights Red Art. So let's search for that, Red Art. I'm going to click Materials and look for all the glazes that have, as one of their ingredients, Red Art. So here we are. We have 5 groups. There are lots of them. And there we are, Red Art, Red Art. So now I'll close all of these recipes again. Now I'm going to click Normal Search. Watch what happens. All the recipes I found before are gone. If I click Advanced Search again, notice that Normal Search removed the batch number and set the target of where I'm searching back to name. Okay, so I'll close this. Now we're going to enter a recipe. To do that, I'll click Add, and the recipe auto-opens. I'll hide that XML, and I'll click Edit. I'm going to add 5 lines. I'll click Save. Now I can enter 5 materials here, so let's put in some. For 3134, say 50. Silica, 30. And kaolin, 20. Now I have a couple of extra lines, so I'm going to click the Delete checkbox in these. I don't need them. And then I'm going to click Save. So now you'll notice that those lines are gone, and now we have these 3. Now I should also set the batch size, let's say 2000. I'll click Save. And now let's click the report link. Now I forgot to put in the recipe title, so let's close this tab and click Edit again. I'll call this Transparent. cone 6. There we have it. Now if I wanted to delete this recipe, I could just go like so. I'll zoom in a little so we can see it better. I have a choice. I'll click No. Now notice to the right of the recipe, normally there should be percentages shown here, but they're not here because the recipe doesn't total 100. So let's try something here. I'll change this to 51 and save. Now they're here. So now let's show you something else. Let's change this back to 50, and then I'll put in grams for the units and save. Now notice that we have an asterisk to refer us down here. We have an invalid unit. So how do I fix that? Well, we go over here to my units, and I'll add a unit, and I'll call it GM, and then grams, and a conversion factor of how many of the base units are in this. The base unit's kilograms, so there are 0.001 kilograms in a gram. Now I'll save that. Now it still says it's invalid, and that's because I need to reference the abbreviation in the recipe, not the name of the unit. So let's edit the recipe, and I'll just change this to GM, save. Now it's working. But we still have a problem. There are missing units here. If I have one unit in a recipe, I need to have all units. So I'll edit, and I'll put GM here, and GM here, and save. Now it looks good. But we have another problem. The total of the recipe is 0.1 kilograms, and that's no good. So I need to change the base unit. And so how do I do that? Well, before I do that, let's try something else. I'm going to click all three of these, and then I'll click Confirm, and then I'll click Delete. So I'm killing all three. Notice what's happened. Insight has restored the two default units, so they can't be deleted. So I'll add a new unit again. We'll put the grams back in, and I'll make that the default unit by setting it at 1. Now I'll click Save. Now we have a complaint here. I can't have more than one unity unit. So I have another one that has a conversion factor of 1. So I need to fix that. So let's edit the kilograms in pounds. Now how many grams are there in a kilogram? 1,000. How many grams are there in a pound? 453.6. I'll save. Now it's working. Very nice. Now notice something else down here in the units. If I want to change all the units in all the lines of my recipes, I can do that. For example, I have GM as the units. If I want to change them all from GM to grams, I could do that just by clicking Change All here. Of course, I don't want to do that. So I'll hide this section. Notice the tutorial videos and help icons are no longer blinking. That's because I logged out and then logged in. Well, actually I logged out twice and logged in. They only show the first 2 times. Also notice down here it says no recipes found. Now why is that? I just entered one. It's right here. The reason is because I have the word red art in the search blank. So I'll take it out and click search. And now here's the recipe. Now I want to classify this recipe. Any recipe can belong to many classifications or many categories, so a folder analogy is obviously no good. I need to set up categories, and that's done here in the type codes. I'll open that and add a type code, and I'll use an abbreviation of TRN, and I'll type transparency and save it. Now I can go and edit the recipe and go down to type codes here and type in TRN. Now I can enter many codes. I can just put a space between them and another, as many as I want, but this will do for now. I'll click Save. Now there we have it, TRN transparency. Now you might wonder why we've handled it this way. Why don't you just pick it from a list? And the reason is to provide maximum flexibility in importing and exporting. For example, I'll demonstrate. Let's go over here. I'm going to remove this type code. Now if we look back at the recipe, it's still there. Insight Live just doesn't know what the name of it is. So I'll put it back in again. I'll click Add. Now save. Now in the future, when I want to be able to find all the transparents, I'll just go to the Advanced Search, choose Transparents, and click Search. Of course, I could also supply a word in the blank to refine the search. Okay, so now let's add a project. I want this recipe to belong to a project. So I'll click Add, and we'll call this Cone 6 Base Glaze Development. I'll save it. Now you notice Insight Live has given it an ID number of 49, so to assign this to the recipe, I'll go in there and go to this project blank and type in 49 and click Save. Now you can see that it knows it belongs to Cone 6 Glaze Development. So you might wonder, why did we do it this way? Why didn't we do it like the type codes? And the reason for that is that projects will be much more entangled in the link structure of your local data, and there'll be a central construct of Insight Live in the future. And we need a more direct linking mechanism. For example, you'll be able to find a project and see all its member recipes, and in the future all the materials, tests, even glossary entries that belong to that same project. Now I'm going to add a couple of pictures to this recipe. So to start, I'll simply click Choose File. The recipe is already open. I'll choose that one and click Upload. Now I have a picture here, and this is the recipe with the 5% tin. I can click it, have a closer look at it. I'll close it. Now let's edit this recipe. I'll just put the picture title in here, 5% tin, and the notes. It's not quite opaque enough. And I'll save that. Let's go back in there for a moment. Notice this. Picture-based name. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. That is the mechanism by which you can bring in large numbers of pictures, because that is from the file imported from Desktop Insight. So I'm going to click Done, and then over here I'm going to click this camera icon, and this is where I can upload up to 50 pictures at a time. It's telling me that I do not have the minimum membership needed. So on my other computer, I'm just going to go and bump that up. I'll come back here and refresh this. Now I'll click Choose Files. And this is the one that I want to bring in. But instead of just opening it here, I'm going to change this name to illustrate a point. Put a -1. Now if there was a second picture, it would be -2 and a third -3, etc. And if you were importing from Desktop Insight, you'd have an entire folder full of picture files that look like this. So let's save that. And now let's bring it in. We'll upload it. Now we're done. I'll go back home. So now we have a second picture. Let's go in there and edit this again. I'll save this as the black version. It has iron, cobalt, and manganese. save this. Okay, now let's do something interesting here. Let's search by picture. I'm going to click on this icon, search recipes by picture, and there's my two pictures. But since the recipe's already open behind there, I'm just going to click continue and go back there. Let's close this recipe, and then we'll click this icon again. Now if I click on either of these, here the recipe is open. Now I want to assign a code number to this recipe that I can write on test specimens so I can connect them with records in the computer. A logical way to do that is to simply click Edit here and type in the code number. G1000 for example, and that's G for glaze tests. But there is a better way to do that because I don't really know if 1000 is the next one in sequence, and obviously I want them sequential. So these three little letters are the key. To demonstrate that, I'm going to go to the Preferences dialog. I've already set up three code number prefixes, G, B, and P for glazes, bodies, and production tests. So if I just click on this G, it's going to find the next one for me. And since I don't have any already assigned, it'll start off at 1000. So that's good. Now I need to be able to print a recipe for this white. But how am I going to do that because the tin is not in the recipe? Well, the key to being able to do that is additions. Additions to recipes are materials like colorants, opacifiers, and variegators. And I do that by clicking Edit. I'll just zoom out a little bit. And here's where I add lines to the recipe. And here's where I add additions. So I'll enter 1 here and click Save. Now I have my addition. So now I can type in my tin oxide, 5, and I have to remember to put GM or it's going to complain, and save, and there it is. I have an addition. So now let's print a batch ticket here. I'll go for 1000. There it is. Okay. Now if I contrast that with a regular report, notice the regular report's not read total to the batch that I specified. Now what if I want to print a report or a mixed ticket for the black glaze? How am I going to do that? Well, the key to be able to do that is variations. And variations are one of the most powerful features of Insight Live. I'm not going to need that black picture anymore because I'm going to attach it to the variation. I'm going to click this checkbox and click Save, and that's going to remove it. And now I'll click Done. And down at the bottom here I have a little Add button to add a variation. So I'm going to call this variation number 2. So the code number will be G-1000-2, and the name, or more correctly the name extension, is going to be black. So it's going to be called transparent cone 6-black. And then in here I'll put my first material, which is iron oxide, and there's 4 parts, 4 grams. I'm going to add another material, and then the notes, I'm going to say do not apply this too thinly. Then I'll save. The act of saving is going to add another line, by the way, but I need 3, so I'm going to do 1 more. The second material is cobalt oxide. Three. And it's going to be an expensive glaze. And manganese dioxide. 2. Now I need to add a picture in here that we had in the recipe itself. So I'll choose File. There's my picture. Upload. Now I can also have individual notes on this picture. Maybe I'll just call it a mug. And save. Notice that the batch can also have its own batch total. I'll make that 1,000 and print. There we are. Notice the added tin oxide is not shown, just the batch. Notice I forgot the units of the other two oxides, so I have to go back there and put them in. If I print a report of this, I'm going to see a picture, and it's not going to be retotaled. Also, I want to point out something else about reports. If I choose report and then I copy this, it'll paste nicely into many programs. Another powerful feature of Insight Live is its ability to create firing schedules and then link them to recipes. But before showing you that, just notice up here I have logged out of Insight Live, and then I logged back in via HTTPS in order to get a secure connection. So if you want to do that, you certainly have that option. Okay, so now let's make a firing schedule. So we'll click Show here. I'll click Add. Of course, I can put the name of it here. I'll just call it Cone 6. In the description, you'll normally put the name of the kiln in which the firing is going to be done. So that's in my scut kiln. The type of schedule is either rate or period. In rate schedules, you tell it the degrees per hour for each step, and in period schedules, you simply give it the hours and the minutes for each step. I can tell it to be Fahrenheit or Celsius. I can set the start time, and I can set the ambient temperature at the start. And then also I can put in some notes. So we'll put some notes here, and I'll click Save. Now to add a step, I simply click here. Now notice that each step has a degrees per hour, a temperature, or a reading from a monitoring device such as, and a reading from a monitoring device such as an oxygen sensor. So you would put the temperature of 1 to whatever, and then a slash, and then the reading from that device, and then the whole time, and that's in hours and minutes. Now if I set that to a period schedule and save, that degrees per hour changes to hours and minutes. So we'll set that back, and I'm going to delete this step, and instead of typing all the steps in, I'm going to import them. And I have all the steps in an Excel spreadsheet right here. So I'll click Copy, and we'll go back to Insight Live, and I'll paste it in there. And then I'll click Interpret. Now there's a number of things to notice here. First of all, notice that my notes were not disturbed. The Interpret feature simply used that box temporarily. And also notice that all of the step numbers have been auto-numbered. I could have included a step column in the data that I imported, and it would have respected that. And also notice over here the times. It shows the amount of time that each step is going to take and the time at which it will be done. So let's make a report of this. I'll just click Report, and there it is. I can take that over to the kiln and use it to program it. So I'll close that. And now let's link this schedule to a recipe. So the schedule doesn't need to be open to link it. I just need to be able to see it here. So I'll open a recipe, and I just need to click, open, and then here I'll click the firing schedule that I want to link, and I could put a 1 or 2 word note in there, but I won't do that, and then I'll just click link, and there you can see it's linked. So if I click on that, now the firing schedule is going to show side by side by the recipe. And before finishing, I'll just mention also that you'll notice here that Insight Live is calculating the chemistry of the recipe and various other things, and that's dealt with in another video. This was an introduction to Insight Live. Please let us know if you find any issues with the way Insight Live operates, and we'll address them quickly.